Okay. So, by all means, I'll mention your church as soon as you type it in and tell me what it is.
Want to do that 4, 5, and 6?
Yeah, we're gonna do 4, 5, and 6. Let's do 4.
Okay, motivation, as he said, is short-lived. And here comes an example. Suppose you attend a seminar of a great personality, after which you feel excited to do something. We've gone to a lot of those seminars, right? But after a specific period of a couple of weeks or days, then the urge starts declining. That has happened to me over and over again. On the other hand, inspiration is enduring in nature that resides inside of us and makes us committed until we attain the goal.
There you go.
An example of that, you gave an example of us listening to an inspiring speaker. I also would like to add when we choose to go to conferences, church conferences, to hear people give us lessons of the Bible, inspire us to take action, to move us from that, again, that dark place to that light place. And the reason I believe that we continue to go to those types of events is that they're short-lived. The motivation is short-lived that they got from that convention, that conference, so they have to go back to re-motivate themselves,
To be inspired.
but not to be inspired. The inspiration is I'm going to take what that speaker said, gave, did, the examples. The motivation is to move forward, but it's spiritual. I've got to spiritually inspire myself to be motivated enough to follow the Word of God,
Right.
or it's short-lived, because motivation is short-lived. So it surprises me, I've talked about this a lot, it surprises me when someone that goes to church will tell you, I got to go get my praise on. They got to go get it. They didn't say I'm inspired to give God grace, to give God the glory, to give God all of the things. That's inspiration. Motivation is I got to go get. And if you go get and the music ain't right, you think the pastor's talking about you in his sermon, the ushers didn't speak to you, first lady didn't speak to you, the usher put you in your unassigned seat, didn't put you in your assigned seat that you paid for. When you go to get, that motivation is short-lived because you don't come away with enough understanding of inspiration to move forward. Inspiration is what motivates you to go to church.
It's the driving force
It's
within.
the driving force within.
Good. Okay.
Inspiration is when you're in church and you're giving thanks to the Father for what He has provided you to do motivationally during the week.
That's good. That's good.
So there is a difference, a big difference between motivation and inspiration.
So everyone should be inspired to go hear the word.
Absolutely.
They're saying in inspire, I wrote this down earlier, inspiration, especially with living in the word, there's a word called inspire, which means to excite, encourage, or breathe life into.
That's a good one.
Inspire comes from the Latin word that means inflame or to blow into. Blow.
That's a good one.
That's how we inspire.
So the question you asked earlier about church, about Jesus, about what He did, so much of the physical when He blew life into individuals, when He healed people, were they inspired or were they motivated? And there are many stories about what people would say to Jesus afterwards. being moved emotionally, moved, motivated to follow him. And many times he would say, take this inspiration
Right.
and go tell other folks.
Mhm.
Move, be
Mhm.
motivated to move. Keep the inspiration in mind of what I did, but be motivated enough to be an example to others. He
Correct.
says that to us all the time
All
in
the
the
time.
Bible.
All the time.
Okay, does that make sense? That make sense, y'all? Thank you.
Chime in. Ready to hear your opinions.
Motivation comes from, I think we're on 5. Motivation comes from an external source, which can be your reward, recognition, appreciation, etc. Although the source of inspiration is internal, a deep desire which emerges inside of us. So again, the definition between motivation and inspiration. Inspiration is that deep desire
Correct.
that wells up inside of us to be motivating enough for us to move. I believe without proper inspiration, we do not accomplish the motivations or the goals that we set for ourselves. Those have to be motivating points for us. There's nothing wrong with motivation. Motivation is great. We need motivation. But we need to understand the difference between inspiration and motivation.
Right. Based on what I was hearing you say and what you just read is, even in our example, in our motivation for accomplishment in our careers, with the rings, the walking across the stage, the accolades, the plaques, the trophies we were able to receive.
Bonus money.
The bonus money, all of that was part of our motivating factor to do the things we did repeatedly, because it didn't last that long.
Yeah.
You know, it's a short-lived situation. But the inspiration to do it over and over again was long-term. And you have to have that internal inspiration or that internal person, something inside of you to keep you motivated to do that every single day in, day out, year in, year out. So it is part of that comparison. And of course, back to running, at the end of the run, even though I know I'm internally healthy, hopefully living a better internal and external life, but we also get little banners and trophies and all this food, and they do a big celebration after these marathons. I mean, I'm not into it, but it's a true culture of marathon runners that goes all over the world. And that's what they do. It's a 6-figure income for those that are extremely successful in it. That's not my level, but there's some people out there that's at that level.
Well, I was thinking as you were talking about people that climb mountains or swim oceans, the motivation to do that. There
Because
has-
Ironman
Ironman competition.
Right.
They have to be first inspired and physically moved, motivated to climb a mountain, take that endurance, risk death in some cases, depending on the mountain and where they are. The people that do climb mountains without walls, just barehanded climbing up walls. I'm not that motivated.
No,
I'm definitely
no,
not.
I'm not that adventurous.
No, I'm definitely not inspired to do that sort of thing.
Right, but people are.
People are.
Right.
But you have to understand you understand the difference between inspiration and motivation. The inspirational part of that is I could lose my life while I'm hanging on this cliff.
Right.
So I am motivated to calculate my next move, my
Right.
next grasp,
Right.
to rest if I'm too weak to pull myself up. Because there is definitely a distinct difference between inspiration and motivation.
When you described that picture a moment ago, I kept coming to my mind that movie Mission Impossible with Tom Cruise hanging off the edge of that mountain, trying to get back over top of it right at the beginning of the movie, Mission Impossible 2. Yeah, you got to be very motivated and inspired to do something that crazy.
Mm-hmm. Well, the inspiration is he had a goal to accomplish that motivation to accomplish that goal. Because he's in the process of the business of saving lives, or whatever espionage or whatever that is.
That to do. But yeah, that's the first thing they show you in the movie, him hanging over the cliff, and all he's doing is with no ropes, all by his hand. What we got? Someone say
Actually, my godson Derek says, I think you're saying you hold yourself to a higher standard, hence the motivation to run continuously. I believe you were right in a sense, Derek. The holding yourself to a higher standard is choosing to be inspired by that standard. It is a standard. It is something that you set inside yourself that you want to accomplish.
Correct.
It is a mental goal that you have to be physically motivated to do.
Well, actually, Derek, and I'm glad you brought that up, because in number 6, it kind of gives, again, the key difference between motivation and inspiration. Number 6 reads, motivation is deliberate or planned instinct that takes a step. Conversely, in the case of inspiration, that impulse is spontaneous. Yeah.
And it has to continually be spontaneous.
Correct.
In order for you to stay motivated
to do it.
To stay on course for that program or that plan.
Correct.
And that
Thank you, Derek. You appreciate that.
Thank you, Derek.
And
as y'all turn this over, I kept going back to seeing this right here is on the comparison.
Okay.
You said motivation force is the driving force. Inspiration is the pulling back force.
Yes.
Motivation is the sense of resistance. Inspiration is excitement and effortlessness. Okay? Motivation, life, short-lived. Inspiration is everlasting. When you're inspired to do something, it's everlasting. When you feel, motivation feel, that's compelled. Inspiration is propelled. And the source for motivation is external. Inspiration is internal. So as far as the impulses goes, take action. When you're motivated, it's deliberate. Inspiration is spontaneous, right?
Correct.
Do you agree?
Correct.
I like the way that's said. I had to end it with that.
That is our chart. I'm glad you brought that up. I had skipped the chart. The chart shows a difference in simple words, single word phrases, as to the difference between motivation and inspiration. And that's just what you
just ask us for. We'll give you a copy of the chart.
Yeah.
Just send your
Excellent difference between based on comparison.
And because that's so long, I probably won't put it on my Facebook page, but I will add this to my archives on my webpage.
Okay, good.
On my website. The last one of our motivational comparisons between motivation and inspiration says motivation is due to several reasons, like self-imposed or social expectations, obligations, and peer pressure that push us to do something, unlike inspiration, which involves a natural and organic call from deep within us. So in helping you understand the difference between motivation and inspiration, the external thing that we impose on ourselves. It can be from people around us, it can be from our job, it can be from the church. Those are expressions, they're obligations, they're peer pressures. Those things push us to do something.
Motivate us.
That's motivation. Inspiration involves a natural and organic call from deep within us. So again, that spiritual thought process that we get, that's what I believe, again, the Bible is about.
It inspires.
To call us to be inspired about the things that have happened there. There are stories, there are consequences, there are deliberations and deliverance from some of our afflictions that we choose to think about, we choose to be affected by, because we keep bringing up stuff that we can't change.
Correct.
And we need to dig deep within to be inspired enough even to seek help. That's one of the things that I have done, trained for years to be able to help people see and understand why they're making the choices that they make, why they are choosing the behavior that they're choosing, why their value system is off, why they're not choosing to use more wisdom, more common sense in some situations.
And that's because of the peer pressure, the things they went through,
Peer
life
pressure,
happenings.
obligations, social expectations,
Social.
and too often we will bow down to other people's expectations of us because our value systems are off. We don't have a good value system of what we should or should not be doing.
So what do you suggest us to do?
I suggest that we rewire, rewrite, rethink our value system.
And how do we do that?
Well, one of the ways we go back and look at all the stuff that we messed up. We
So
look
it's
at
journal.
We journal. We look at and write down the things that we're choosing to think about, with the things that press us the most. As in part of our journey to wellness at our church, we do what was called inventory. We do an inventory of the good and the bad. If you want to move from good to better, you have to look at those bad things and see, how can I make them better?
I think that's a good thing to work on. I'm gonna do that over the next week. Write down the good and the bad. I see Derek said something. Did you say what he said?
He said send the material. I'll send it to you, Derek. I will send it to you. Text me your address and I will email address and I'll email that to you. My email address is mastermindwisdom. Actually, I'm gonna send my email address, mastermindwisdomcoach@gmail.com. mastermindwisdomcoach@gmail.com, and I will send you a copy of all the material that I have here.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just about to say, we're going to come to a conclusion, but I was reading, and this is something that, in the comparison of motivation as well as inspiration, and we kind of mentioned this earlier, and I talked about Jesus, and I was hoping I got another comment on that, but we look at the word inspiration, and I'm reading out of 2 Timothy 3:16, and it says, for inspiration, all scripture is breathed out by God and profitable for teaching, for reproof, for correction, and for training in righteousness. It's the divine inspired word of God, which we recognize that's the inspiration part of the Bible, which is kin what Jesus Christ teach. So I like that part in 2 Timothy 3:16.
2 Timothy 3:16. Okay. And the Bible does inspire us. That's why we go. That's why we go to hear the word.
Right.
That's why we go to learn the word.
Correct. And it's in us for the duration of our lives once
Right.
you discipline yourself and come up under the authority of God.
Right.
I want to thank Amos for joining us. That's Amos
Hello, Amos.
McGinnis.
How you doing?
Hi. Amos.
Welcome, Amos.
Welcome.
Derek says, please reserve a day to deliberate on value systems. We're gonna do that right now.
Wow, talk about next.
Talk about next.
Yeah,
Talk
we're
about
gonna-
another day.
We got time.
We have time because we have a whole another hour.
No.
No,
No.
not quite. We got about 35
Okay,
minutes.
I'm sorry. We do have 35 minutes.
35, 40
30
minutes.
minutes.
No, not 30 minutes, because we're gonna give the folks that follow us time to have their day in court as well.
Big court.
Before we conclude our talk on motivation and inspiration,
Right.
and move into wisdom and
values.
values, I think and thought it important for us to understand what motivation and inspiration are. So then when we talk about applying wisdom to that, wisdom is judgment, good sense, common sense, and insight, then you understand the things that motivate you and how to inspire yourself to move forward. How to use these techniques to have better wisdom and a better value system. So we're going to talk about a value system now. But in conclusion, it says motivation is used when you want people to act in a particular manner and act immediately. Whereas inspiration is when people want to achieve something great, which will make them better than they are at present.
I need all the inspiration I can get.
Now, let me repeat that. So, and I'm going to emphasize, motivation is used when you want people to act in a particular manner and act immediately, because a lot of times that's what we as salesmen do. Whereas inspiration is when people, yourself, want to achieve something great, which will make that person, me, better in the present. What we're trying to do in the last 30 days of my 30-day challenge is help folks find that inspiration in themselves to make themselves better. Now, part of that motivation was us being on air and sending and talking like we're doing here to help people get to that point. So, any questions on that, then of course, send them, call me, text me. Derek also said, so could we say motivation plus inspiration equals aspiration?